We know sports.
Oh, baby, a right hand jam.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live as always on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Of course, tonight is the start of the Major League Baseball playoffs, so we will touch on that. Rangers, Tigers, all-star second baseman Ian Kinsler will join us coming up at 6:20. Talk more baseball with him. Also, we'll get into more on the Eagles and the NFL with all of you guys out there as NFL Week 4 officially finished last night. And what was cool about last night is we gave you winners yesterday, and we hit on some of those winners. So we'll talk to you about all that as well as we go throughout the show here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN with yours truly, Josh Hennig, at Josh Hennig on Twitter. Of course, you can chime into the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Priority messaging through the app. You can DM the show each and every day. Text board is open as well, 609-403-0973. But I want to start specifically with the Eagles because it seems as we are going forward that there's a new narrative that's grown. There's a new narrative that has developed. And Mike Gill touched on this some yesterday on the Sports Bash. And I wanted to get back to it today because I wrote over on the website at 973ESPN.com yesterday about, and I gave you very specific details about how the Eagles offense was better and the quarterback was better and the offensive play caller Sirianni were better in Sunday's loss to the Chiefs than they were the previous 2 weeks against the Cowboys and the 49ers. But there seems to be a growing sentiment, okay, among everybody, at least online, all right? I have not personally run into these people. But online, I have seen these people and I've heard these people as they use their keyboards and their phones to speak very loudly. And what I'm finding is that these people are very intent on actually not caring about facts or information because we live in a world now where people are more emotional than they are logical. All right. It is what it is. It's part of the gig, right? But everyone wants to blame Sirianni for the penalties. Now I get it. The penalties are bad. I've written about it 3 different times on the website. I am very well aware of how bad the penalty situation is. But at some point, we as sports fans, and I'm not taking myself out of this criticism because we all have been guilty of it. And if you say you have not been guilty of this, you're lying to yourself. We all have been guilty of the reality that we want to blame coaches for things that may not be their fault. I'm here to tell you that we need to stop blaming athletes for their mistakes and stop being lazy and blaming coaches. We need to accept the reality that people deserve praise when they do something right, and they deserve blame for when they do something wrong. Guess what? I am not blaming Sirianni for Dillard committing the same penalty multiple times. If you blame any coach, blame Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, because somehow he has Jack Driscoll ready to go and to play at a high level about 90 minutes before kickoff. He's got Dickerson ready to go to play left guard. He played well. And he's got Herbig ready to go playing right guard. So why does Stoutland have 4 of the 5 offensive linemen ready to go, but Dillard's not? I'm not blaming Sirianni for that. I'm not blaming Sirianni for Derek Barnett being a bonehead. Now, if you want to blame the Eagles organization that they keep trotting Barnett out there, that he's making these mistakes, then let's blame the Eagles organization. If you want to blame Kevon Wallace for his stupid hit 2 weeks ago, don't blame the coach, blame the player. At the end of the day, the Eagles have committed 44 penalties. And I guarantee you that not all 44 of those penalties are Sirianni's fault. Now, here's a question. Why is J.J. Arcega-Whiteside on the field on the goal line? You want to blame Sirianni for that? Sure. I'll blame him for that because I said yesterday on the show that if I'm the Eagles, I don't play J.J. on the line anymore, on the goal line. Play both tight ends, Ertz and Goddard. Play 2 wideouts, quarterback, running back. That's all you need. You don't need 3 receivers. You want to blame Sirianni for putting J.J. on the field? That's fine. But I'm not blaming Sirianni for J.J. being basically brain dead and stiff-arming a guy on a pick play. That's just football common sense. At some point, people got to stop blaming coaches for everything. It's not always the coach's fault. Sometimes you just got to say the player did a bad job because the player gets paid millions of dollars to do their job, as Bill Belichick would say. And listen, you can read my article on 973ESPN.com, and I go into full detail about how Sirianni's game plan was better and more productive because he got back to the running backs and the tight ends, who we barely saw any action from them in weeks 2 and week 3. We saw a bounce-back performance from Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has now done something that Peyton Manning, Russell Wilson, Lamar Jackson, Ben Roethlisberger, and Aaron Rodgers never did. Who gets credit for that? Do we give Hurts the credit? Do we give Steichen, the offensive coordinator, credit? Do we give Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach, the credit? Do we give Sirianni the credit? Or do we give Hurts the credit? There might be a combination of factors there, but I tend to lean to give an individual player credit for an individual accomplishment, just like I will lean to give blame to Derek Barnett and Andre Dillard and on down the list for their mistakes. Can the coaches do better? Of course they can do better. They're 1-3. Of course you could do better. Let's stop being lazy and blaming Sirianni for these 44 penalties. If you're the person who wants to get up on your soapbox and blame Sirianni for all 44 penalties, then I challenge you to sit down with somebody like myself who watches game tape, and I would love you to point out to me exactly where and how the coach is responsible for said penalty. And I know what the answer is going to be. Well, the coach sets the standard. The coach develops discipline. Really? How many times have teams won despite of their coaching? Was Carson Wentz, all of his interceptions, all Doug Peterson's fault, or was that Carson Wentz's fault? We've heard the stories about how the Bucs defense, when they won their first Super Bowl, they went out to win to prove a point that the organization should have never have fired Tony Dungy. And they didn't hate Gruden, But they didn't win because of Gruden. They won because they were extra motivated. And they were all in the primes of their career. Brooks and Sapp and Barber and all those guys on that defense. Rice. A lot of studs back there. Josh Hennig here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. See, I'll get some of your guys' messages here before we hit the break here as we hang out with you, talking some Eagles to open the show. We'll get deeper into the Major League Baseball playoffs coming up in about 10 minutes from now. Ian Kinsler used to play for the Rangers, the Padres, the Tigers, all-star second baseman. He'll join us to talk more about the Major League Baseball playoffs. Yankees, Red Sox tonight. Coverage begins at 7:30. Tomorrow night, Dodgers and Cardinals. Also coverage begins at 7:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Couple comments coming in here I want to get to as well. Shout out to Delaware. That's all the guy asked for. He wants to shout out to Delaware. He's listening to the show. He's watching the show. He says, hello, Josh. Shout out from Delaware. Well, Delaware, right back at you. Mr. M. David Dellinger. Fred chimes in, says, Troll's got to have something to complain about. Gannon is becoming one of their favorite targets, too. Yeah, but the Gannon thing to me is a little different, Fred, because the reason why they're mad at Gannon is because Gannon did so well for 2 weeks. They held the Falcons to the least amount of points they've scored all year. And they did the same to the 49ers. So how do you go from giving up 23 points in 2 games to then all of a sudden allowing 42 points to the Chiefs and 83 points in 2 weeks? Now, is that Gannon? Is that game planning? Is that game adjustments? Is that no Brandon Graham? I don't think we have a right. I don't think there's a clear and concise answer there. But I understand the Gannon frustration. But you're right. Gannon is becoming a new target because Gannon, he's young. What does he know about football? Did he play the game? We hear the old get off my lawners, yell that all the time. Did he play the game? What does he know? Listen, Gannon's scheme is very different than what Philadelphia has seen in a long time. You had the wide 9 under Jim Schwartz. You had the fraudulent 3-4 defense under Billy Davis. You had the Juan Castillo mess. And then you had the Sean McDermott trying to carry on the Jim Johnson legacy. And then you had Jim Johnson. Before that, Ray Rhodes was here. So there's a long history of defenses in the post-Buddy Ryan world that the fans have gotten used to. Now, if you're going to criticize Gannon, which I think he does deserve one criticism specifically, I think that some of his zones have been a little bit too broad at times. I think that if he made his zone coverages a little tighter and a little less generic, I think it'd be harder for the quarterbacks to read it. I think that guys like Mahomes and Prescott can read a zone defense pretty well. It's like in the NBA. The reason why you run a zone defense in the NBA is because you don't have great man defenders. So you run a zone defense to hide people. You do it in high school, you do it in college, and now you're doing the pros. So a zone defense is not just a purposeful, it's also a way for them to cover up some of their coverage issues. So I think that Gannon deserves blame for specific play calling, but not a general principle. Because you don't go from giving up 23 points to now 42 in one game and 83 overall. You went from 23 to 83. I have trouble hating him too much. Really quick, message says, I thought Billy Davis ran a 3-4. Technically, it was a 3-4, but it was one of those weird 3-4s where, the the guys would line up on the line and make it look like a 4-3 or a 5-2 at times, but they would just be pass rushers like Connor Barwin. So I think Billy Davis was actually not a good coordinator. I think Billy Davis was out of his depth calling that defense. I think that was a problem. That's why I call it a wannabe 3-4, because if you go watch the pure 3-4s like the Pittsburgh Steelers run, there's specific things that guys do. Whereas the 3-4 that run by Billy Davis, I think he was trying to be like Belichick and try to run variety with his defenses, and it just didn't work out very well. I thought that he just didn't have the talent. I don't think he had the acumen to properly execute that 3-4. All right, we'll get to more of your messages a little bit later here in the hour here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Coming up next, Ian Kinsler, MLB All-Star, joins to talk about Yankees, Red Sox for the playoffs. Win or go home tonight. You can hear on 97.3 ESPN. Before you hear on 97.3, Ian Kinsler talks about it next.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. It's week 5 of the 2021 season with the Eagles headed to North Carolina to face the Panthers.
Gets it to McCaffrey. He screamed it, and he's going to lose yards.
Pre-game coverage begins this Sunday at noon. Maryland Mike call all the action starting at 1. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank in Seattle City. Well, you've heard us talk about the ultimate fantasy league for football before, but now professional fantasy sports is back for baseball. And joining us to talk about that as well as the Major League Baseball playoffs that start tonight is a man who knows some of these teams very well. It is Ian Kinsler joining us right now on the phone line to talk more baseball right here on 97.3 ESPN. Ian, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's playoff baseball time. So, yeah, it's always an exciting time.
Absolutely. Before we get to the actual game, let's talk about this is absolutely wild. I mean, professional fantasy sports, it mimics all MLB 30 teams, 26-man rosters, 40-man list, all the options that a real manager would have to go through in a game is all a part of this professional fantasy sports league. So I want to ask, what got you involved with this?
Well, I got a call from a teammate of mine when I was going to play in the Olympics for Team Israel. A teammate of mine was involved in this, and he started talking to me about that, or about this at that time, and it sounded super interesting to me. It was a lot of information at the time, and I wasn't really grasping it or honestly really paying attention. And then after the Olympics finished, I got another call from Matt, and we were able to kind of sit down and discuss this, this ultimate fantasy league baseball thing. And like you said, it's like as close to the real thing as you can get. You said it's kind of like managing a team. It's also like being a general manager of a team, being the scouts, managing the minor league systems, and then also managing like your everyday lineup. So there's just like so much that goes into it. And that's really what interests me in it is, it's not just a shell of regular fantasy sports. You can really like dive into this, get to know the game a little bit better. If you don't want to just be the regular, common fan that follows baseball, or any sport, that they do hockey, they do football. This is where it's at. You can really dive into the logistics and just everything that goes into running a professional team. It's pretty cool. It's pretty intense, and that's what kind of drew me to it.
Now, one of the interesting things about this as well is the fact that athlete involvement is where you create your NFT and you get rewarded financially through the fantasy play as well as the NFT revenue. So, what does this mean for athletes? This is a completely different opportunity for basically revenue generation.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we're going to really break the bank on this thing, but it's cool to see your own NFT and to be involved. I guess you can say realistically, where they actually take your stats and what you're doing on a daily basis. And I think most fantasy sports do that, but now these teams, there's only 30 teams, and now they can buy these NFTs. They can have these players on their team, and then they're able to trade them or basically own these NFTs and control them how they like. So that's a really cool bonus to that. And I think that, it allows the players to feel like they're a little bit more involved, especially the guys that, aren't playing baseball every day now, guys that have retired and moved on. And it's cool to see that you can still be involved in like a fantasy sports scenario.
And for anyone interested, whether you are yourself a former player, you're a potential franchise owner, you want to be a scout, you want to be a GM, you can send an email to info@uflb@gmail.com. That's info@uflb@gmail.com. Ian, let's get to some of the baseball on the field, because tonight's game involves some people that you're very familiar with. You won the World Series with the Red Sox, and you look at this team tonight. They're going against the Yankees, one of the biggest rivalries in sports, and it's win or go home. it feels like it's the most baseball thing ever to have Yankees Red Sox in a winner go home scenario.
Yeah, it is for sure. Before I played for the Red Sox and I was on, around the league playing for other teams, I was always envious of the Red Sox Yankees because they were always on TV. They're always prime time. They're always ESPN, MLB Network, Fox Sports. They always showcase Yankees versus Red Sox, and I really didn't understand that. I was like, man, why can't you put the Tigers on, or why can't you put the Rangers on, or whoever, the Padres? Like, why can't we be in prime time? This is nonsense. Red Sox and Yankees get all the pub. And then when I was able to be traded to the Red Sox, and the second series that I played in Fenway was against the Yankees, I completely understood, the intensity, the fan experience, it's pure baseball. The only way that I can describe playing, in a series game or in like a winner take all type game like this, when it's Yankees Red Sox, is like a European soccer, like a Premier League soccer match. It's intense. Everyone's paying attention to every pitch, and it's like you said, it's what baseball is made of, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch tonight for sure.
When you think about this rivalry, like you said, you played in Texas, you played in Detroit, you played other places where you had success. What was the difference for you being on a winning team with the Red Sox compared to those Rangers teams that you were on, or the Tigers teams that you were on?
Well, the Rangers teams were very similar. We went back-to-back World Series in 10 and 11. Lost both of them, unfortunately. Played in one of the best World Series ever in 2011 when the Cardinals beat us. But those teams were very similar to that Red Sox team that won in 2018. And it was just a magical season. I came in halfway through, and for me, I just didn't want to get in anyone's way. I didn't want to mess up the flow that was going on and the chemistry that they had. I just wanted to fit in and slide in and fit in and continue to get clutch 2-out base hits. It seemed like every time there's an RBI situation with 2 outs, we were driving runners in, and whenever we made an error defensively, someone always seemed to pick up the slack offensively. And it was just one of those magical seasons. And that's what it takes. And the crazy part about it was that team did that, perform that way through the playoffs and all the way through the World Series. And it was an incredible season to be a part of. And I was definitely grateful, and will always be grateful to be a part of that.
4-time MLB All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner Ian Kinsler joining us right now on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to the Ultimate Fantasy Baseball League, professional fantasy sports unlike anything you've ever seen. Ian, when you think about as well, you had this long career, but as someone who played baseball for as long as you did, how do you feel about the one and done wild card? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Because some people say, hey, baseball is about a series, right? And other people say this is exciting that it's a one and done.
I mean, there shouldn't be 2 wild card teams to begin with. So you're adding another team. I think that team should be grateful that they're getting a crack at it. I think that ever since I actually played in the very first wild card game against the Baltimore Orioles in Texas in 2012, and we lost that game. But I think that it's great for the game. I think that it just adds a ton of excitement. I think viewership, the ratings and everything go way up for these one game playoff scenarios. And in a season like this where you have the Cardinals that are red hot playing against the team that won 105 games, and the Dodgers or whatever, they won 106 games. Anything can happen in that one game. And I think people are really drawn to that. And then you add the Red Sox and Yankees to the mix, and you got a 1-game playoff. I think that it's great for baseball. I think that it adds to the excitement. And then, obviously they get to move on and play in a series of games. So, before when there was no wild card game, the wild card team went directly to a series. There's only one wild card team. They went directly to a series, and they had an opportunity to, set their rotation and be just like any other, playoff team that won their division. So winning the wild card, there was really no disadvantage. So I think this also gives those wild card teams that make it through tonight and tomorrow night a little bit of a disadvantage going into a 5-game series, because they're trying to do everything they can to win this one game. So I think it sets them behind the 8 ball a little bit, and I think that's the way it should be. When you're a wild card team, I think it's right that you have a little bit of a disadvantage going into that series. So I really like the way the playoffs are set up right now, and hopefully they keep it that way.
Now, who do you like this year in the playoffs? Who do you think is going to go the distance this year?
Oh, man, it's a tough question. I think, the Giants have been one of those teams. It's just a magical season for them, and they seem to always be doing things the right way. Very humble group, not a lot of flash. They play hard every day. They really seem to be extremely consistent in the way that they perform. Whether it's offensively, their defense is outstanding. They say in sports, defense wins championships, and they obviously proved that through 162 games and won the West and finally dethroning the Dodgers. So I'm going to go with the Giants just because of the experience that they have on that team and the magic that they've created so far this year. I think that I'm going to go with the Giants. I don't know. I mean, who knows what's going to shake out, but if I was a betting man, I think I'd go with the Giants.
That's going to bother some people in this area because there's still a lot of Gabe Kapler haters who are in this part of the country. The Philly fans who looked at Kapler, he's not one of us. And now he goes to the Giants and he's got the best record in baseball.
Yeah, tough break, I guess.
Ian, a couple more things I wanted to ask you about here. You're someone who, you were born in Arizona. You got drafted by the Diamondbacks, but you never got to actually play for the Diamondbacks. Is there a part of you that maybe looks back at your career and maybe wishes you actually had the opportunity?
No, I don't. I really think that everything lined up for me in Texas when I was drafted by them. I was drafted late. I was drafted in the 17th round, and to be able to make it to the big leagues and opening day roster in 2.5 years, the organization was, really had my best interest in mind. Obviously I had to perform, but they pushed me along very quickly for a 17th rounder, and to make an opening day roster, and not be a September call up and starting from, day one was a huge boost of confidence for me, and really never looked back. The funny thing about that is I was drafted by the Diamondbacks twice, and then I was drafted by the Rangers, and Buck Showalter was actually the manager of all 3 of those teams that I was drafted by, twice by the Diamondbacks and once by the Rangers. He was the big league manager for those 3 teams, or those 3 times I was drafted. So it's just a crazy coincidence. But playing for your hometown, I think is always cool. But I don't know if I'd want to go back and do it again. I like the way that it turned out.
Now, Ian, you get to play with some amazing talents in your career. You had guys like Josh Hamilton in Texas. The year you were with the Angels, you had Mike Trout out there. With the Red Sox, you had Mookie Betts. Years from now, when you're having to explain to your kids and your grandkids about how great some of these players that you played with, how do you explain it to them about guys like Hamilton and Trout and Betts?
I don't know how you have to. I don't know. That's a really good question. I mean, I played with Adrian Beltre. I played with Albert Pujols. I played with Miguel Cabrera, Fernando Tatis Jr. Manny Machado. I played with a lot of great players. Chris Sale. So it's just a different level. And when you get to the major leagues, the thing that separates players at the major league level from the minor league level is just the consistency, being able to do it consistently at a high level, day in and day out. Well, when you get to the Hall of Fame level with the players that we named, they're able to do it as consistently as everybody else, just at a different level. Just producing more and being able to play all aspects of the game. And it's really hard to describe. Trying to describe somebody like Josh Hamilton, I think is really difficult. And Mike Trout, guys that are just extremely gifted physically. It's just hard to describe. You got to talk about their BP and just the things that they do on the field. I mean, I can remember Josh Hamilton's first swing in batting practice. His first swing in batting practice every day, he's hitting the ball in the upper deck somewhere. It could be left field, center field, right field. It's all over the field. His first swing of the day, he's hitting the ball in the upper deck. Most guys, their first swing of the day is like a little ground ball in between second and first, trying to get loose a little bit. But not him. He's just built to create force and speed, and it was incredible to watch. That's a really good question, and I don't know how I would go about that.
Well, the reason I ask is because when I talk to people about some of these guys, I always tell people that, to me, Josh Hamilton is the closest thing in real life we have to Robert Redford's The Natural to me, because he was just, he looks, everything he did was like he was born to play baseball. But when I look at guys like Mookie Betts and Fernando Tatis Jr. you mentioned, or someone like Mike Trout, those guys could have literally played any sport, and I think they would have been successful. But the fact they chose baseball and they're so great at baseball adds to another element to who they are.
I agree with you. I agree with what you said. Yes. And like you said, Josh Hamilton was born to play baseball. He could have been a quarterback. He could have been, a tight end. And the guy was 6'4", 230 in his heaviest years, 220, 225, running like the wind. I mean, he scored from first on a double with ease. And when you say born to play baseball, that was something that always bothered me. I was always taught no one's born to play baseball. You got to earn it. You got to work for it. You gotta put in the hours of practice to get to that level and to be that good. But with a guy like Josh Hamilton or Mike Trout, it's, I think they literally were born to play baseball. I can, remember Josh. He honestly on the field couldn't tell you what he was doing or why he was doing it. It just all seemed to come together for him. Why he read, a little looping line drive over the second baseman's head to go first to third. He doesn't know why. He just has those instincts. Or why he threw, a 98 mile an hour, cutoff and relay throw perfectly to the cutoff guy that cut somebody out of home. He never overthrew the cutoff guy, but he had a tremendous arm. And most guys with tremendous arms, they wanted to show it off and, airmail everything. And he was sound. He was a sound player, but he didn't know why or how. He didn't practice being sound. He just had those instincts, and it was really impressive to play alongside him.
That's an incredible description. I don't think we can do anything more today. Yeah, that was a perfect description of Josh Hamilton. Ian Kinsler joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. It's Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball, professional fantasy sports, 30 teams, 26-man rosters, 40-man limit. It's like running your own baseball team. If anyone wants to get involved, they can email info@uflb@gmail.com. Whether you want to be an owner, a GM, a scout, or maybe you're yourself a former player and you want to get involved, info@uflb@gmail.com. And of course, Ian Kinsler is involved, and these guys get to hit some financial reward with the NFT revenue. It is literally next level fantasy sports, and Ian Kinsler is involved in that. Ian, before I let you go, if there was one element of the professional fantasy sports that we're talking about here that you want to tell people why they should be involved, there was one thing that you could point to, what would that be?
I think it would be just that it allows you to be as close. It just mimics the rules of baseball to a T. As far as guys going through waivers or, guys being released, trades, arbitration, all kinds of things that a normal fan might not think about, the day in and the day out, rules of baseball and what a general manager actually goes through. This is what this league provides. And scouting, just, a lot of people are pooling their money together as a team of people that are trying to conquer this and make a bid on a team and winning the bid. And then, they'll have one guy doing the scouting or two guys doing the scouting and one guy doing the general manager stuff. And, one guy doing the day in and day out, filling the roster and the roster fills. So it's super intense. It's a lot of fun. And there's just a lot of different ways to attack it. So for me, it's just that it mimics Major League Baseball, as closely as possible. And that's kind of what drew me to it also.
And folks, you can also follow them on Twitter at the UFLB on Twitter. That's Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball. Ian Kinsler, 4-time Major League All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner and World Series champion, joined us today here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Ian, I appreciate you joining me on the show today and hope we can touch base again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Have a good day.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, you can hear Yankees Red Sox coverage begins at 7:30 tonight on 97.3 ESPN FM. And of course, tomorrow night, Dodgers versus Cardinals. So the 2 one-and-done games, you can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, we will be having baseball coverage throughout the month as we lead you up to the World Series. Here, your home for the Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, the Major League Baseball playoffs, the NFL, all that and more right here on your home in South Jersey for sports. 97.3 ESPN FM. We'll get back to your guys' messages on the other side. Of course, you can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Of course, we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 97.3 ESPN. And a text board is there as well. 609-403-0973. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is Game Night.
The American League Wild Card on ESPN Radio.
A 3-run home run for Buffington.
High inside, and now Manny walks out toward the mound. Zimmer took a swing at Pedro Martinez. Boom. He swings down the left field line. It's over.
I mean, what can I say? Just stick my hat and call the Yankees my daddy.
The Red Sox, the Yankees. Coverage begins tonight at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio. Listen to the MLB Playoffs exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Everyone loves shopping on.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night 973 ESPN FM, the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Get to your messages here in just a moment here on the show. We talked about Eagles to start the show, some MLB playoffs there with Ian Kinsler. I love what he had to say about Josh Hamilton. I've always been a person where I've viewed Josh Hamilton as this phenomenal talent, and everything he said only confirmed everything that my eyeballs told me about Josh Hamilton, his own personal experience. I mean, this guy played with dudes who are going to the Hall of Fame, dudes who have won MVPs, dudes who are going to have phenomenal. And what he said about Josh Hamilton, incredible. I mean, they do play with Mike Trout, play with Mookie Betts, play with Adrian Beltre. All those guys are pretty much going to the Hall of Fame. Fernando Tatis, he might be in the Hall of Fame as well one day too. Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN, being brought to you, my friends, over at FanDuel Sportsbook. They want to give you the most out of every game day, and NFL Week 5 is here. That's why they're giving everyone a $10 risk-free bet every week. Thursday night is a great opportunity to make a same-game parlay bet with 3 legs or more. If your bet doesn't win, FanDuel will pay you back up to $10. There's no feeling like nailing a same-game parlay bet. So lock in your bet today when the Rams play the Seahawks on Thursday night and get the $10 back if your bet doesn't win with FanDuel Sportsbook. New to FanDuel Sportsbook? Sign up today with promo code Hennig to also receive a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code Hennig for your risk-free bet for NFL Week 5 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play and present in New Jersey. Refund issued is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile or web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And of course, we talked about last night. You know, we gave you some winners last night. We're going to review those here in just a second with you guys because, first of all, obviously the Chargers covered the 3. The Raiders played hard, okay? It's not like, here's the thing. I don't think the Raiders are a bad football team. I just don't think they're a great football team. And I think right now, if you had to ask me which quarterback I'd rather rock with moving forward, I'm probably leaning Justin Herbert over Derek Carr. So the Chargers covered the 3. We also told you to take the Austin Eckler over on the rushing yards. He was at 85.5 right before the close of game time. Well, 117 yards looked pretty good. All right. So gave you a couple winners last night. Hopefully you got some same game parlay action. Obviously Keenan Allen didn't have the greatest game last night. So if you did use Keenan Allen in one of your same game parlays, you would have gotten the $10 back with FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, let's get some of your messages before we get out of here. Text board 609-403-0973. Mike in Ocean City chimes in and says, Josh, coaches are doing just fine. They didn't magically get a new roster, a new organizational philosophy, or a passive owner. No, they got all the old issues, but are here to inject a new culture. Hopefully they get a chance. From Mike in Ocean City. I'm with you, Mike. I just want to see people given a chance. We live in a world where we want everything now. I call it a microwave society. We want our food right now. We want everything immediately. We want immediate satisfaction. We want immediate return on investment. We have no patience, no forward thinking. We have no idea how this really works at the end of the day. So, you know what? I tend to think that Mike from Ocean City is right. We got to be patient. We got to see what happens. Give Sirianni the full 17-game slate before we deem him or Gann or any of these guys a pass or a fail. Fred chimed in as well a little bit. I mentioned how NBA zone defense to me is used the same as NFL zone defense. He says, speaking of NBA defense, I think some of us, me included, Fred talking about myself, might be putting too much stock in Maxey after last night. Thought the kid has undeniable work ethic. Fred, let me tell you something. And I recommend this to anybody. Don't live or die by a preseason game. We all saw Sam Bradford years ago, and people said he was going to win the league MVP. He was going to be amazing, and he was not amazing because it was a preseason game. I've seen too many preseason legends in my time. From Paul Turner to Dietrich Gels. All right? I've seen too many guys who looked bad in a preseason game do amazing in the regular season. How many times you go to a spring training game or you watch it on TV and you see a pitcher not pitch well and you assume he's not going to have a good season, and then you find out that he was working through his pitches, and then he goes out and has an amazing season. I believe in Tyrese Maxey. I believe this young man was built for this city. He was built for this environment, and I think he's going to be just fine. I think that he has the work ethic, as you mentioned, Fred, and the personality to do good and great things in Philadelphia. I don't know what his potential is per se, but there's a part of me that looks at him, and I've seen what De'Aaron Fox, another Kentucky Wildcat, has done in the NBA, and I think Maxey can get to that level, if not maybe a little better. I think Maxey was a diamond in the rough where he got drafted because he was not the polished product coming out of college that a guy like De'Aaron Fox or John Wall were when they left Kentucky. I think Maxey theoretically might have been able to stay another year and build his draft profile, kind of like Buddy Hield did years ago. But I think Maxey is going to be just fine with the Eagles. I'm sorry, with the Sixers. Speaking of the Eagles, Kyle messaged it a little bit earlier. Says Andre Dillard and Derek Barnett need to go. Well, the problem is, Kyle, where are you going to send them? Where are you going to trade them to? Who wants them? If you get rid of them, you have to cut them. Of those two guys, though, I'm assuming that Dillard is the most tradable asset because at least Dillard looks like a starting NFL lineman. And I think that there are plenty of teams that need offensive linemen. I think Derek Barnett is damaged good at this point. I think he's got a bad reputation. I think the refs are targeting him now to throw flags. I think that he has done himself no favors. I think Barnett's going to play out his time in Philadelphia. He's going to hit free agency. He's going to go somewhere else to restart everything. Thanks to Ian Kinsler, former Major League Baseball All-Star, for joining us on the show. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.